Hi, my name is Julianne. I'm an astrologer, and this video, I just wanted to create some space to talk about Pluto returning to Capricorn in a few months. So specifically, really right on the 1st of September, would be the 2nd, depending on where you are in the world, Pluto will move backwards and be in the sign of Capricorn again. And it will spend roughly 3 months there. It will be retrograde for a bit of that time as it moves backwards, and then it will start to move directly again and make its way back into Aquarius by the end of November. So, personally, this is one of my most anticipated time periods and transits of this whole year, and actually of this entire, dare I say, decade. And that's because Pluto in Capricorn is not the cause, because astrology is never the cause of anything. Astrology is the reflection of it happening. It is the law of as above, so below, as below, so above. It is the same exact thing as when a clock tells you what time it is. The clock does not make it so that the time exists, but it signals a unified understanding of a concept that we have all been working with for quite some time. So, Pluto is probably the most important planet to understand when approaching astrology with a desire to get to the bottom line of whatever can be gotten to the bottom line of. And wherever Pluto goes, it will spend roughly 12 up to 20 years in one sign. So it's a very slow moving planet. It isn't visible to our naked eye, and symbolically and, essentially what that means is it reflects parts of our consciousness that we also can't see. Pluto is necessarily invisible to us. Pluto is our undying soul, and the desires of that undying soul that bring about life and life experiences. A fun tidbit about Pluto is that it really does mark the generations of people. So, for example, the difference between millennials and Gen Zs right now is largely comes down to Pluto in Scorpio versus Pluto in Sagittarius. So the Pluto and Scorpio folks are millennials, and the Pluto and Sagittarius folks are Gen Zs. And I won't get into the dynamics of that, but if you think about Pluto as our deepest desire, Scorpio being the sign of desire itself and the deepest access to ourselves, to have the planet of deepest desire and the deepest access to that desire, millennials are really hardy with experience of like needing to survive, needing to transform themselves over and over again, needing to witness and just really bear witness to the fall of the world that they thought they would become into, but realizing things are not set up the way they expected them to be or were told they would be, for many of the millennials, whereas the Gen Zs are Pluto and Sagittarius, which is much more about belief systems, much more about philosophy and this idea of natural law, which is about what is organic, what is true, what is honest. And it's a fire sign. It's more concerned with what's real and present right now, instead of Scorpio, which would be a little bit more of a deep, abiding, churning soul process that takes a little bit more time. Millennials are very quick. Gen Zs are very quick, comparatively. This is a gross generalization, okay? But this is just to say that Pluto works on this kind of larger generational level, but it also works individually in each of our charts. So if we think about then Pluto's time in Capricorn since 2008 up until this year. Now, Pluto hasn't been in Capricorn at all yet into the year 2024, but as I'm saying, it will move back into Capricorn for 3 months from September to November. And so we are getting what is called the last hit of this transit that will happen in our lifetimes. We will never, experience Pluto in Capricorn again. And Pluto in Capricorn is all about radically transforming the very bones of our society, the institutions, the governing lineages such as the patriarchy, institutions, governments, these things, men, cancel culture, all of this thing around there being an establishment. It's Capricorn. It's a Saturn thing. And it's not to say there's no room for these Saturn pieces of institution and government. Obviously, it is an archetype to itself, and therefore it belongs in this world. But when Pluto has been there, it was signaling a reflection of this time where we were in the midst of the foundations collapsing. Foundations literally collapsing and having to be regenerated on a DNA level. And that sounds kind of like a lot, but we have had to radically transform our perception. And it's not to say it's finished by any means, because it just moves itself forward now. But so since Pluto has moved into Aquarius, things have been not necessarily better. Pluto doesn't really care about whether things are good or bad on the surface. It's an impersonal planet. It's really not about any one of our personalities. Pluto is about change. Pluto wants a transformation to happen. Doesn't care how you get there. So since Pluto's been in Aquarius, Aquarius is an air sign. It's about the edge of what we know individually and collectively. So that points us to questions of course, AI, but also questions of consciousness and energy, and what our connection to the human collective is at all. Aquarius is the sign of humanity, is the sign of the groups that we partake in, that we feel aligned with. Similarly, it is about the groups we don't feel aligned with and where we feel ousted from. So there is a huge emphasis right now, collectively, on these questions, right? Not only AI, but the larger implications of what is a soul, what is consciousness, because of these catalyzing AI features, but also of where do I belong in all of this? If I'm gonna take up this camp or this other camp, what if blah, blah, blah. Okay. So when Pluto moves back into Capricorn, it will feel heavier because Capricorn is an earth sign. This air is a very intellectual sign. And I know that there is real non-intellectual shit happening in the world right now that is really traumatic. And this isn't to explain away that just by some cosmological intellectual thing. It's to say, like, the Pluto in Capricorn will, I think, actually help us to embody, to physically feel how dramatic and painful and traumatic things have been in the last several years. And that is for the ultimate reason of healing it. Capricorn is about our bones and like the structures, any structure, which in the human body is our bones. It's like what our bones are carrying, what the structure of who we are, how we identify, how that carries our self. And when Pluto goes back in there, it will feel, wow, because we have been doing that Pluto work for so long now. We've had a respite with Pluto in Aquarius, but once that planet moves back in and we start to feel that weight on our bones again of transformation, it might, I'm not here to predict the future, but I will say that the months of September to November will be the finale. There is an extraordinary chapter ending between these months that each of us has been waiting for individually and collectively. And I would say since, dare I say, 2008, but most certainly since 2020, when we had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction with the North Node up there in Capricorn, and they all passed Pluto. You know, it 2020, I mean, okay, I'm losing it now, but the point here is just to say and maybe this isn't news, right, to you. There's this feeling in the air of that this year, the rest of this year, is kind of about somehow still wrapping up an old chapter that isn't fully wrapped up yet. And I really think we're going to do it. Like, I really think something will wrap up. And that is simply just because Pluto is not going back into Capricorn in our lifetimes. Anyone who's alive right now, 99% sure you're not going to be around in another 200, however many years when Pluto gets back around to Capricorn. That's how long it takes to make a full cycle. So I just wanted to put this out there. There's some interesting specific transits that'll be happening with Pluto at that time in those 3-month period. But, you know, I've been really anticipating this for the last 2 years as Pluto's been moving into Aquarius and back into Capricorn, into Aquarius and back into Capricorn. So we've been on this cusp for so long now, or so it feels. And after this, we will be squarely having Pluto in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So without even knowing more than that, I'm inviting myself to consider more broadly what structures in your life you rely on, how you feel the weight of that in your bones, and what transformations are happening now that don't feel quite finished, but feel dying or feel like they're rounding themselves out shortly, but might be coming to a peak, might be coming to a final act, you know, because that is up, that is very up, and I am excited for it. I am so excited for it. But alas, I also know that life just keeps moving. And so it's not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a significant chapter. So if you have already things you're looking forward to September through November of this year, let me know in the comments. Yeah, I just wanted to put this out there because I'm really curious and interested, and yeah, that's it. So we'll see in a few months now, but that's all for now. Bye.